You know, do me a favor. All of you that are on, if anybody was not with us yesterday, would you just type in me, just the word me, into the chat box? Because if we have a bunch of brand new people, I'm going to kind of go through a bit of a summary quickly about yesterday. If everybody was here yesterday, then I won't need to do that. Okay, so just a couple people. So let me do this. So I'll tell you quickly one more time a little bit about me. Ray Wayne, I built a team in Los Angeles, California called the Busy Blondes. It was a really unique, kind of silly, catchy name years ago. It says on there, I'm a 7th level agent. That's what we're going to talk a lot more about today. In the Keller Williams hierarchy. Hey, Carol, nice to see you. In the Keller Williams hierarchy, in the Keller Williams model, we start out as a solo agent, which is level 1. Then we hire our first assistant, which puts us at level 2. Then if you follow the model, we hire a second assistant, which puts us at level 3. At level 4, we start to have other agents working with our buyers. Level 4 is when we leverage the buyers. Level 5 is when we leverage the listings. Level 6 is when we step out of almost all the production. We have other agents doing buyers, other agents doing listings. We're still there, very present as the manager, the leader, the CEO. That's level 6. Level 7, as it says here on my slide, is when your team is running with such a solid foundation, you actually can step out entirely or almost entirely. You now own a business, and a business that functions without you being there. And that's why it says there that I am a 7th level agent, because for many, many years, I mean, in 2010, I moved over an hour and a half away from my Busy Blonde operations. So when I used to say I'm hardly ever there, I was hardly ever there. In 2016, I actually my husband and I bought a home in Florida. 2018, we sold the California house and became full-time Floridians. So now we live in a charming little beach town called Hernando Beach. And yet for many, many years, I was paid every time there's a closing. That's what 7th level can be. We're going to talk about that today. You can see on the list here, I was a longtime MAPS agent coach for over a decade. I'm actually in my 16th year of coaching wonderful top agents and helping them build their teams. Right now, I work privately as a coach. However, for over 10 years, I was with MAPS. Love MAPS. I was one of the early bold coaches, one of the early bold trainers on the road. I am today one of our international master faculty instructors. That's the highest teaching certification that our company has. And I'm also certified as a John Maxwell speaker trainer. I have actually gone through the course and all the requirements. And so I am legally legally allowed to present John Maxwell's material for free or for pay. So that's a little bit more about me. Now, where we left off yesterday, we went through the first level and we talked about being a successful agent. Which slide is that? I'm going to guess maybe that's 3. Nope. Oh, I made my disclaimer yesterday. So for those new visitors, I'll say it again. All of this material is based on a lot of Keller Williams systems and models, because the company is a forerunner about building a business and building teams. All of this information today is about my personal experience for several decades running and building a very, very successful team. All of this material today is also based on so many of the coaching clients that I have worked with and what their experiences and best practices or mistakes made might be. I'm very opinionated about the best way to do things. The disclaimer is you don't have to agree with everything I say. You may not like everything I say. There's more than one way to do a listing presentation. There's more than one way to go to go about a price reduction. There's more than one way to interview a candidate and hire them. So there's lots of different ways to skin this cat called a real estate business. And my disclaimer is a lot of this you may not agree with, and that's okay. This is just giving you more options and more opinions and more possibilities. So where we left off yesterday, we finished level 5. And what I'd really love, and you were such a quiet group yesterday, now I'm able to actually see the chat box, so I don't have to keep bothering poor Bailey, who's been just amazing. And who was our other helper yesterday? Was it Chantal?
Oh.
I can't remember the name of the other girl that was monitoring.
It was Chevelle.
Chevelle. Okay, well, I would have been lost without the two of you yesterday. Now I can even see the chat box. As I explained yesterday, everybody, this is my first time doing this on Zoom. I'm usually doing it live. I'm usually doing it in a full day. So this is all new to me. What I would love is either verbally or in the chat box, if anybody would give me a couple ahas from yesterday, a question you might have from yesterday. We covered a lot of material yesterday about the foundation, about leadership, and about going through all those levels. Is there any comment? And then I'm going to get to, I believe it was Doreen. I'm going to get to Doreen's question at the end of the day about capital gain. Could anybody just type a few words in or even speak and tell me what you got out of yesterday? I know people are still drinking their coffee and getting settled in at their desk. Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Anybody, any thoughts from yesterday?
Ray, this is Jolie again. Yes, I'm a new agent and I've learned so much in seeing your perspective on how you achieved your owning your own business and how you operate. It's eye-opening and very useful to me. So I enjoyed every part of your talk yesterday.
That is very sweet of you. Good morning, Chevelle. Thank you for all your help yesterday too. Thank you, Jolie. That means the world to me. Feedback is the breakfast of champions, and it really means a lot to me, especially in this environment where I'm not able to see everybody necessarily smiling or nodding. So I really appreciate that. Anybody else have any other?
Doreen, what did you learn yesterday? Sometimes you have to pick on them, Ray. Doreen is our ALC member and she always learns a lot. Look at that face.
All right, well, I didn't put you on the spot, Doreen, but
I did. Give me one aha, Doreen. Come on.
Yesterday, when we left the end of the class, I was telling them that I wanted to talk more about when the seller sells their home and they have to pay their taxes and talk more about that. And I know that's something that sometimes we don't pay attention to. So that was one of the big things for me yesterday.
Right.
Because sometimes we don't even bring that up with our clients sometimes, and we just think about getting the house sold, getting them on to the next property, and we don't talk about, hey, talk to your tax guy about XYZ. So that was one big thing for me yesterday, and I really want to learn more about that today, as I told Ray.
Great, yeah, and we're going to open with that in just a moment. So, and thank you for contributing that at the end of the day. And I know that Martha, I shouldn't put anyone on the spot, Martha wrote about rate of retention. Yeah, that was the very beginning of the class. That was that study about how people retain information, how they learn information and retain information.
Yeah, I don't know why that was something that I hadn't ever known the statistics, and that was something that was really good for me.
Yeah, and actually, if I can find that slide one more time. Here it is. I'm going to do it again real quick because a lot of people tuned in late. And this is just one of the many studies about how do we learn and how do we retain information. And this is so important for when we work with our clients and customers, I, of course, looked it up as being a trainer. So just a quick review. When we hear something, so you tell your client something, yes, the contract says as is, but that doesn't mean that when the buyer comes through, they still might make requests. When we tell somebody something, their rate of retention when they just hear it is only 5%. I used to think my clients were stupid or stubborn, and I realize it's not that. It's just that we just don't retain that much when we hear it. When we read it, it goes through our eyes, into our brain, through the optic nerve system, and our rate of retention is 10%. So we actually have twice as much chance of remembering it if we read it as opposed to if we hear it. When you combine them, audio and visual, the rate of retention goes up 20%. So the best thing, and Martha, you may or may not, I have to realize, to me, a lot of having you work on my team, and Martha was a buyer agent on the Busy Blondes team at the height of our production, probably, were you there 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Almost 4.
Almost 4, yeah, so like 2002 to 2006, really in our big, giant growth stages. And
Lots
so
of fun.
I asked Martha a couple questions yesterday, and she didn't remember that clearly. And I have to remember, she left in 2006. She left 14 or 15 years ago. She's been on other teams. She's been in other cities. She's gotten married. She's had children. She's gotten divorced. So she didn't remember things as clearly as I do. But one thing that, Martha, you might or might not remember, I always, and back then, in those early days, we didn't even have DocuSign. I like to write the offer with the buyer in person.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to go through the contract in person and explain where the blanks are that they're filling in, explain what those clauses mean. I like to tell them so they're seeing me, they're hearing me, and then I would point with my finger so they're reading it. And Martha, you might remember that. We liked doing that and taking
I
listings.
miss that because that's when you build trust with them. That's when we
Yes.
really built trust. And that's something with this DocuSign and stuff, it's hard.
Yes, exactly. There's very little rapport. And I wouldn't be surprised if statistically we have a little more fallout now, partly because there's a little less commitment. It's just click, 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 click.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, not to get on a sidetrack here. When we tell them and let them see it visually, it's 20% rate of retention. The best thing you could do when talking to a client is, as you're telling them, and I did this yesterday with class, say, write this down. Mr. Smith, get a piece of paper. I want you to write this down. Open houses are always from 2 to 5 p.m. Please vacate by 1:30. Write it down. Please vacate by 1:30, because even though the open house doesn't start until 2 o'clock, the agent may arrive early. Sometimes some buyers start lingering a little early. We want to make sure that you are not put on the spot. We want to make sure that we're the ones interacting with the prospects at that time, not you. So the open houses always start at 2, and please make a note to vacate the house by 1:30. As they hear it and as they write it down, they're going to remember it more. Audio and visual and writing, 30%. So that goes to what I just said, and that's why I urge people to take notes. Whenever I travel and speak and teach, I tell them I want to see those little pens flying, because even if you never look at your notes again, just the fact that you heard it, you see it, and you wrote it down, you got 30% chance of retaining it. And then discussing it in a group, practicing it, teaching others. Like if the class ended and you ran into another agent today and said, God, you know what I learned today? But, the trainer was talking about blah, 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 blah. Just sharing it with someone, your rate of retention goes up. Think about when you hear a great joke. How many of us have heard lots of great jokes in our lives? You can nod your heads. Lives. If I picked on you right now and said, tell me 2 great jokes, a lot of us would go blank. We don't remember them unless we tell them all the time. When you tell the joke over and over again, we remember it. So thank you for that, Martha. before we dig into the profitability, let's talk a little bit about capital gains. Was there anyone else, because I said before I kind of give my 1 or 2 minute description, was there anyone else that joined us yesterday that would like to give Doreen kind of a quick summary of how capital gains work and how that might affect some of our clients? Checking the chat, checking the screen. So long-term capital gains are very good. Short-term capital gains are terrible. And when you vote, just remember it's not always the person you want to vote for. You know, one party wants to get rid of the capital gains, and that will be very bad for our industry. So short-term capital gains, you buy a fixer. You buy it for $100,000 and 6 months later it's done and you flip it for $200,000. And then you had some other costs of fixing it up. So you flipped it for $200,000 and let's just in easy numbers say you netted 80 grand from this flip. Short-term capital gains are 50%. You're gonna owe half of that money to the government. So it's not terrible, but it's not great. I mean, we all pay taxes. It's an awesome country. Taxes are important. That's what keeps our country going. But short-term capital gains. Now, short-term capital gains might also, and here's where you need the accountant, that might also apply even after 2 years if it wasn't your principal residence. But that's, in a nutshell, short-term capital gains. Even if you moved into the house yourself, let's say you got a killer buy on the house. You bought it for 100 grand and it was a steal. And 6 months later, you got transferred, you have a relative that's sick, you have to move away, you know, you won the lottery, whatever. 6 months later, you're able to sell that house and net 80 grand on it. Even though it was your principal residence, you're gonna owe short-term capital gains, 50%. Now, once you've lived in the residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, so basically you live there for 2 years and 1 day, now you're going to be subject to the short-term capital gains. Short-term capital gains is only 20% or so. And I don't know, and here's where the accountant comes in, I don't know if it's a flat fee for all of us or if it depends on some of our other tax situations. So short-term capital gains are much better. If you flip that house and enough time goes by, you won't pay as much tax on it. A lot of people flip houses and they have no idea about the short-term capital gains or the long-term, short-term. So a lot of people, especially new first-timers, it's realtors or the people, the kids you see on TV, the young people, they have no idea. And they don't show it on TV either. They show you, you know, here's what they paid for the house, and here's what they paid, you know, for the fix-up, and here's what they paid for this or that, and then it shows you their profit. But if they did it all in less than 2 years, they're going to be subject to the short-term capital gains, 50%. Long-term capital gains is if it's your principal residence and you lived there for 2 out of the last 5 years. For almost all of our sellers, Doreen, they've lived there. If they've lived there 2 years or more, they get the benefit of the shorter term capital gains. Now, there's also something awesome that got voted in years and years ago, and one of the administrations wants to take it away. There is a one-time exclusion on capital gains at all for your principal residence. This isn't about investment properties and other business kind of stuff. This is your principal residence, the place you call home. The entire government, we voted in, there's a $250,000 one-time exclusion per person if both people own the house. So the example we talked about briefly yesterday, Doreen, like let's say your client has lived there forever, they own it free and clear, they're gonna sell it, they're gonna clear they're going to net $400,000, and they're so excited because they're going to take that whole $400,000 and buy a retirement place. If your client, if your seller is a married couple, they each get a one-time exclusion from this principal residence capital gains. They each get a one-time exclusion of $250,000 each. So in that scenario, there would be no capital gains. This nice couple could take that entire $400,000, do whatever they want with it, whether they're buying something else, whether they're going to travel, whether they're going to, whatever they want to do. But let's say your seller's is either a single lady or a single man, or it could be someone, I mean, as I said yesterday, I've had multiple marriages, and, you know, some of the homes that Glenn and I own, we're not both on title. Some of them, it might have been his house. Some of them, it might have been my house. So if the people selling, for some reason, there's only one of them that's the real owner of the house, and they're going to net that $400,000, they're going to be subject to a one-time exemption. Let's say the lady is the owner, because I love women power. She's going to have to not pay any tax on $250,000. However, she didn't gain $250,000. She gained how much, everybody? Yell it out to me. $400,000. So she's going to be subject to the long-term capital gains on that other $150,000. If the number is 20%, which I kind of think it is, it's either somewhere 20 or 25%, $30,000 of that $150,000, she's going to be given to the government. So, and if it's 25%, it'll be a little bit more. One of the reasons that we thought that this law or this exemption would never pass years ago is for most people in most parts of the country, they're never going to be netting $250,000 on a house. They could live there till they die. Most little, you know, most parts of the country, things don't go up like that. However, I came from LA, from California, where people that lived in houses for a few decades, they could make $1 million on that house. And you all, almost all of you, you're in Palm Beach. So you, I know one of the great things about your market, you can sell less expensive stuff and you can sell really high-end stuff. So you very well could have people that have lived there long enough where they're making over $500 on the house. Or if it's a single person, they're making over $250 on the house. So that's the capital gains situation in a nutshell. Does that help you, Doreen? Yeah. And, yeah. And of course, you still say, get the exact numbers from your accountant. However, when you can speak of it intelligently, it's much more impressive. Yeah, especially like if you're on listing appointments where you're competing, if you're even on the phone with someone and you're competing, you know, they're interviewing other agents, you know, you can look up how long the people have owned the house, and you can come there armed with just this little piece of information. And one of my favorite scripts is, gee, I bet other agents haven't told you this. Or, gee, Mr. Smith, most realtors would not even bother telling you this. Most realtors don't even understand it. You know, and you want someone that understands a lot of the you know, possible pitfalls. You want someone who understands every nook and cranny about this transaction, not just sticking a sign in front of your house. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So awesome question, and thank you for participating.
Thank you, Ray.
So we talked a lot yesterday about commission splits and compensation. And those of you that missed it, again, raise your hand, yell at me, put something in the chat box, and I can summarize. The reason we talked about this a lot was it's so important we are profitable. You know, my husband was one of the top coaches with Keller Williams MAPS coaching. He coached a few teams you might have heard of, such as the Sue Adler team, the Ben Kinney team, the Tim Heil team. I, you know, also was with MAPS for over 10 years and coached some of the biggest teams in the nation. Those of you in Florida might remember Lori Finkelstein Reeder from the Fort Lauderdale area. I believe last year she closed 680 units, and her GCI 6 or 7 million or something like that. Both Glenn and I coach, top teams. What I will tell you is, and I won't name any names, a lot of these teams are making giant commission income, GCI, gross commission income. A lot of these teams are making big GCI. A lot of them are doing big volume, and they have very little profit. If you're happy, I'm happy. We've had clients come to us, they're doing 2 million a year GCI, 3 million a year GCI. Their profit is 10%. It's a terrible profit margin. Now, I say all the time, look, if you're living in a tiny town in Texas and you're doing $3 million of GCI and your profit margin after everybody gets paid is 10%, $300,000 is not a bad life, especially if you're in a little town that's not expensive. If you're happy, I'm happy. And yet it's not a model that we teach. It's not a model that we coach to. Does anybody know, and you could yell it out or type it in the chat box, based on the MREA book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, where Gary interviewed all those agents doing over $1 million and got all of the averages of what they spend and what they pay and how much they keep. Does anybody know, based on the book, what the optimal profit margin is based on MREA? What is the profit margin, the optimal profit margin for a team supposed to be? Good for you, good for you. Oh, and it's my coaching clients that are responding. Yes, 40%. Rounding off the little decimal points, the way that MREA laid it out, and this isn't like a theory, this was after interviewing all these agents. They basically said you're going to spend 30% on your fixed costs, you're going to spend 30% on your variable costs, and you should have 40% left over. Now, I'll tell you, the top giant agents in the Gary Keller Mastermind, most of them aren't hitting 40%. The average seems to be 30 to 35% profit. So as I work with my coaching clients, some of them will get depressed. Oh my God, I'm only at 34% profit. I should be at 40. And I'm like, it's okay. The book is old. Remember I said yesterday that when that book was written, we did not have as many expenses. Those of us building teams, leading teams, did not have such high expenses back 20 years ago when Gary was writing the book. However, the optimal, according to the book, is the 40%. So I'm going to just quickly try to make this super simple and not let anybody get in the weeds and show you how the model should work. We're going to pretend that an agent is bringing in 600,000 GCI, and we're going to assume that it's 50-50. Half the business is closed buyers and half the business is closed listings. A profit and loss statement. And many of you that I coach are awesome and you've got it down and you're hiring great people that do it for you. And then I'm working with a few of you that are on the call today, and that's one of our coaching goals. You're newer with me, and that's one of the things we haven't tackled yet. There's only 3 parts to the profit and loss as far as what gets listed, and they get listed in this order. You've got variable expenses, and the accounting term is cost of sale. A lot of you may have heard this cost of sale term and never really knew what it meant, me being one of them. Variable expenses are cost of sale. Basically, that means if there's not a sale, you don't have the expense. Okay, let's make it real simple. That's what cost of sale means. If there's not a closing, you don't have the expense. So yell out or type in the chat box. What would be one of your biggest expenses if you're running a team where you only pay it if there's a closing? The money only gets paid if there's a closing. If there's no close, there's no expense. Anybody think of what 1 or 2 of those things might be? Yeah, very good, Cynthia. Cynthia said company dollar. Yep, that's true. We don't pay money to Keller Williams unless we have a closing. Yep. And then someone else I heard say commissions. Transaction fees, E&O, very good. E&O, my E&O at my market center in LA was based per deal, like Cynthia's writing. She's in the Phoenix Scottsdale area, if any of you need an awesome agent in Phoenix Scottsdale. Some offices, the E&O isn't paid per deal. Some offices, it's a fixed expense. It's a once a year fee or a quarterly fee. The biggest cost of sale is commission to your salespeople, as far as the cost for the business. You know, you don't pay that buyer agent any commission if there's no sale. You don't pay the listing specialist any commission. Transaction fees, if they're per deal, that would be another one. Sometimes bonuses. Some of you may have a staff person that makes a certain salary or a certain base, and then you're giving them a bonus per close, $50 per close, $250 per close. That would be a variable expense, a cost of sale. If there's no closing, you're not paying it. If some of you, and I hope you don't, if some of you buy a home warranty plan for your buyer, that would be another variable expense. If the sale doesn't close, you're not paying for the home warranty. So profit and loss statement, first segment of it is the variable expenses. The biggest one will be the commissions you're paying out to the people on the team. Okay. Fixed expenses, also known as operating expenses, that's the second part of a P&L. A fixed expense is the opposite. You have that expense whether you close a deal or not. What would be some examples of the fixed expense? Whether you have a closing or not, this is an expense that you have to pay. What would be some examples of that?
Your office rent.
Yep. Very, very good. Stephanie, welcome back. Glad you're here. Very good. Janice, absolutely. We've got advertising, office rent, salaries, desk fees. Your biggest fixed expense when you're running a business will be salaries. However, all of those that you named, those are fixed expenses, MLS dues and fees. For some of you, E&O, if you're not paying E&O per transaction and you just have to pay that, you know, periodically, that would be a fixed expense. Those are the two things that get listed on a P&L. And every P&L I've ever seen, first they have the cost of sale, the variable expenses, then they have the fixed expenses. And then whatever is left over is your profit. And we're talking pre-tax. We're not going to talk about after taxes because everybody has different tax brackets and different write-offs. So that's, you know, for my beloved Edgar and Jackie that I know joined us today, where we want to get to here, that's the first P&Ls we're going to do are going to be that simple. Just what are the variable expenses, what are the fixed expenses, and what are the profit? Okay, so let's break it down a little more. If we've got 600,000 GCI, half of it buyer business, half of it seller business, let's figure out how do we make our profit. Look at the buying side on the left side. We taught yesterday, you're going to pay out a maximum percent of 50% on the buyer side. I don't recommend 50-50 buyer splits because that maximum 50%, look at my slide, you're going to pay money to the buyer agent, someone's going to pay money to the showing agent, and someone might be paying money to the ISA, OSA. I should add sales manager on here. I got to add that because we talked about that's one of the biggest reasons we don't pay 50%. We want there to be that extra 5 or 10% override to give the sales manager. However, in the model, Gary says we can pay out a maximum of 50% total on the buyer side. That means, again, you, the company, the house, you got to keep 50% on the buyer side. So on that 300,000 on this left square, the buyer side, you're going to have a gross profit of 150. Everybody with me? Great. Okay, now the listing side. In MREA, in the model, the listings are mostly being done by the leader. He talks briefly about listing specialists, as we discussed yesterday. However, at the time the book was written 20 years ago, very few teams were paying leverage on the listing side. The listing was almost always being done by the leader. So in MREA, if we look at the right-hand square, 300,000 on the listing side, they're telling us we're going to pay out around 10%. You're going to have some referral fees. Somewhere along the line, you're going to have a couple referral fees on your listings, and you may be paying some bonuses to your staff, like we described. So in the model, we're going to say on the listing side, you're going to pay out 10% of that 300,000. You're going to have the gross profit of 270. Everybody follow this? So as you'll see on the next page, you're going to profit with this $600,000 team. And by the way, when we talk about the team and the P&L, all the income goes onto that P&L, all the income of the team. Even if you're not directly paying your agents and Keller Williams is paying them, or I have a few visitors from other companies, all the P&L is all the business that your team brings in. And then all the money that came out of that revenue comes off the P&L. Some people give me a P&L and the numbers are really off, and it's because they don't have any of their team members' gross revenue and they don't have any of their team members' payout on it. So back to this, based on this model, on the buying side, 300,000 GCI, you're going to profit 150. On the listing side, 300,000 GCI, you're going to profit 270. Your total variable expenses, because all this is variable, it's the cost of sale. Your total are 180, right? See the red numbers in the left square, the red numbers in the right-hand square. You're going to have a total variable expenses of 180, which gives you this gross profit after cost of sale of 420. Okay, that's your first part of the P&L, cost of sale. Now remember, then that's variable expenses. Now we have the fixed expenses. The fixed expenses, you have these expenses whether there's a sale or not. Based on the MREA chart, the average team is spending 12% of their GCI for salaries. In this model, that's going to be 72 Rand or 6,000 a month. In this model, now whether that's 72, whether that's 2 full-time assistants, whether that's, you know, 1 and a couple part-time, that's what the model says we'll spend. The next line, marketing, advertising, promotion. In the book, all these teams that were interviewed spend between 5 and 10% of their GCI a year on marketing, advertising, lead gen. In this model, we'll go the 10%. If you spend 10% for your lead gen and marketing, that'd be 60,000 or 5 grand a month. We've thrown in another 8% for all other expenses, because there's going to be some other expenses besides your salaries and your marketing. You're going to have maybe client gifts. Maybe you're going to have client parties and events. You might stick that under your lead gen. You might stick it separately. You see I have here, don't micromanage the small recurring expenses. This is based on the book. So now you had, remember on the last page, we were at 420 profit after our cost of sale. And now we've got another 180,000 of expenses from our fixed expenses up here. We've got the 72 for the salaries, the 60 for the lead gen and marketing, and then miscellaneous 48. That would give us a gross profit of 240,000, which is exactly 40% of the 600. I'm hoping that I didn't lose anyone. When I became a coach, I did not understand any of this. My partner, Judy, who I've referred to, was the numbers gal. Judy looked at our numbers. She looked at our P&L. She was really into the numbers. I did not learn all this until I became a coach. And I'm proud to say that there were times I was helping coach the other coaches on how to understand P&Ls. So now I love it. It's kind of like a puzzle, and I love putting it together. And I love looking over P&Ls and figuring out what's out of whack, what's in whack, just according to the model. If you're happy, I'm happy. I have some teams where their fixed expenses are much higher. However, they pay very advantageous splits to the house, for their company. So some of my teams, they're at a great profit margin, but their fixed expenses are really high. Their cost of sale is low. I have the opposite. I have some teams where their cost of sale is high. They're paying bigger splits than I recommend. However, they have such a great, strong organic business, they're not spending a whole lot on the lead gen and the marketing. So their profit margin is good, even though the numbers don't match. Make sense, everybody? Okay. So, I've got it here again. The budget model, the profit. Yeah, your total expenses in that model, like I said, your total expenses, you're paying out $180,000 in your cost of sale, and you're paying out $180,000 in your fixed. Oh, I have a typo there. Fixed and operating. Total business expense 360, and that's giving you that 40% profit. Okay, now we're going to move into level 6. Now remember, at level 4, you leverage your buyer business. At level 5, there's someone beside you taking listings. This is the new slide from MREA2 that I don't know will ever be written, and it's certainly not published. It's got a part 1, and I don't care for these slides. As I said earlier, I want to go by the book because the book made it more simple. The book is why we joined Keller Williams in those first meetings with Gary when he drew circles for us. And the book is how we built the Busy Blonde team. But this, you could have, you could start with the expansion, and part 2, you're going to start with expansion businesses. Let me see if I have, this is level 6 in the book. Remember, what we're basing this class on is your 3 key hires. You get somebody who's really strong on the listing side, you get someone really strong in charge of everything administrative, and you get someone really strong on the buyer side. You have 3 key hires, and now you start to really own a business as opposed to running around like crazy. Now in this model, you are still the agent, right? See that circle? You're still the leader. You're still the CEO. This model, you're not like me. You didn't move across the country. You're still present and involved in running your business. You're just not in day-to-day production so much. At level 6, you will likely have multiple buyer specialists. By then, you will have more circles than this. So here's all you have to remember to keep it simple. At level 6, you, the Rainmaker leader, are no longer taking listings, and you are no longer working with buyers. At level 6, you are no longer in production. You are working on your business instead of working in your business. You are still the CEO. Now, don't take me so literally that you're never allowed to work a client. It's your business. You can cherry pick. If some lead call comes in and they sound really cool, they're well connected, they're in an industry you'd like to have more contact with, they're in a high price range, you can still work a deal now and then. However, at level 6, you basically are not in production. Basically, you got people that do your listings and you got people that do your buyers. And on every team that I have coached at this level, there's more buyer agents than listing agents. That's level 6. Let me go back for a minute. So I'm going to talk for a moment about expansion. How can I say this? There are some very successful expansion operations. And let me put it this way, most of them are not. So when I speak at Family Reunion, and you can see in the lower left corner, this comes from my session that they gave me back in 2019. what I want to say is expansion is one more option. You don't have to start building your team in a bunch of other cities to have an amazing business. Most expansion teams do not make much money. Many, many expansion teams have lost their shirts. And a few will do really well with it. The average profit margin of all the expansion teams in Keller Williams, you type me a note if someone needs me to go deeper or doesn't understand what I refer to about expansion. The average profit margin is 13%. Now, if they're running like a clock and you got amazing people and you don't have much worries about them, hey, 13% is not bad. If you had, you had 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, and each one of them is going to do, 500,000 in GCI, and you start adding it up. However, it's not that easy. The average profit margin of the expansion teams is 13%. That's the highest profit margin that Glenn and I have ever seen for an expansion team was 20%. And that expansion team, the father of the expansion agent who built the team, the father was a big giant builder in the other city. So, so that agent, when he put his expansion team in the other city, he had all that built-in business. You following me? I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying we don't have successful people doing it. I'm just saying, here's what I put together back in 2019. These were just some of the successful teams I coach that have built their teams without expansion. Also, these teams built their teams without ISAs or OSAs. Martin Bauma, who's up there in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who I still work with, that year he did 205 units, and look at his GCI. Ben Bartolozzi is an awesome guy outside of Green Bay that I work really closely with. That year he did 290 units, look at his GCI. Heather Murphy in Savannah, Georgia is an icon in our company, real class act, wonderful team. He has a great knack for talented people. I also do separate calls with her buyer team. I coach her buyer agent team.
Hey,
So,
Ray, how many
yeah.
agents does she have now on her team?
Heather?
Yeah.
Heather has 2 listing specialists and 5 buyer agents. And I can't always give you the exact number because a lot of these teams, they ebb and flow.
No, that's okay. I
yeah,
used to work with her in Savannah, Georgia. And
Oh,
she
awesome.
I was the assistant MCA there, and she was really growing and just pumping her team at that time. So it's really nice to see her on this list.
Yeah, glad to hear that. Yeah, glad to hear that from you, Chevelle. I will tell her that you said so. Yeah, I know her numbers really because I talk to her every week, and I'm coaching her buyer team.
Oh,
So
nice.
some of these other people, if you said how many are on this or that, I'd be guessing. But hers I know very, very well because her goal was to really get herself out of day-to-day production. And I've been coaching her since she was the only one that took listings, and then she had her buyer agent, and then she got her first listing specialist. And actually that first listing specialist she got is still with her now. So I believe Amanda's been there at least 2 years. And now she has a second listing specialist. Tessie Pagano, who I adore, she comes a little bit from my adjacent stomping ground in California. No ISAs, no OSAs, no expansion team. The Lori Satuchik's team is in Bellingham, Washington. She started out on Ben Kinney's team. When she left him to build her own team, Ben actually asked me as a personal favor if I would coach her and help her do that. Those were their numbers. Hames McDonough, really sharp girls up there in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Palm. My dear, dear friends, the Mammo team are right here in Spring Hill, Florida. They're the reason that I moved to this tiny town. I give them and Nancy Lee honorable mention because even though they're not over $1 million, they have awesome businesses. Dawn and Sarah Mammo, when I started coaching them, their average sales price was $90,000. I am proud to say that after a couple years, they got that average price up to $125,000. This year, since COVID and prices going up and everything, their average sales price is even higher. I have the little asterisk next to them. They'll never get invited to Gary Keller's mastermind because even though they're doing phenomenal amount of units, their sales price is so low, they kind of get overlooked. I really judge people, not judge. I respect people based on the unit count because, and I don't care about volume. You can see I don't even have volume on here. Someone tells me, oh, Ray, I have someone I want you to coach. They're doing 15 million. That tells me nothing about their business. It could be 15 deals, right? You know, it could be 150 deals. I need to know how many deals people are doing because if someone's doing 150 deals right away, I start to see circles. I know, you know, okay, 150 deals, they got to have someone else doing their buyers. They may or may not have someone else doing their listings, and they've got to have more than one assistant. So I always want to know how many deals are people doing. And then secondly, what money are they making? So you'll see here on the left, to build a fantastic business, expansion is an option, it's not a requirement. To build a fantastic business, adding an ISA or an OSA, it's an option. It's not a requirement. Any questions on any of this? And these numbers are outdated because again, this is my slide from Family Reunion 2019. All right, second level. Excuse me, seventh level. Once again, I don't like this slide. To me, it's really convoluted and it's making it look like you got to have a director of expansion and you got to have, you know, this expansion business here. What I want you to really see here is now look at the red circle. You're no longer, you're at the top of the organization, but now there's a CEO under you. We call it the replacement talent. Now you can survive at level 6 forever in a really beautiful way. Heather would be example. Heather has somebody super strong on the admin side. She has somebody super strong on overseeing the buyer side and super strong overseeing the listing side. She basically, she can travel a lot. She could pursue other businesses and stuff without replacing herself. At the 7th level, you're replacing yourself. Here's the 7th level model from the book. You're the agent, you're the CEO, but what it doesn't show on this, you've got your 3 key hires. At level 7, you actually will get someone else as that CEO. Then you become the person like me that was able to move across the country and still get checks every month from closings. If you want to do that. Most agents will never get to 7th level, and most agents don't even want to. I coach some people, they love this business. They want level 5. They'd like to not have to be the only one that always goes on listing appointments. They want level 6 maybe even, where they've got such a strong listing person or persons where they don't go on appointments anymore.
Ray,
Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in the chat box, but I was wondering, is it possible to hire an ISA before anyone else just for consistency purposes?
You mean just for yourself?
Yeah.
It's possible. I call that a tweak of the model because
Right.
I don't think tweak is a bad word. Yes, I suppose you could. You could hire someone that's going to just do lead gen for you, just make calls for you, just knock doors for you. You could hire someone that's just going to do appointments and, you know, get you appointments. You know, the model would usually say you really are going to need some kind of an assistant before you do that. Because before you do that, you got to be managing your database. You got to be doing your 33 or 36 touches. You got to have some kind of marketing, some kind of drip campaigns. And for the deals you are doing, you don't want to be the chief, the cook, and the bottle watcher. So I would still say even a part-time assistant would be smarter before the ISA, OSA, because there's no one better at making calls and talking to your sphere and doing all that than you. However, yeah, you could. If you could find someone that was going to just lead generate for you to get you busy enough and then you start dealing with the assistants, you could. The reason I call it a tweak, everybody, a client said to me a few years ago, she's like, Coach Ray, I have a question. I said, what? She goes, do any of your clients follow the model? And I'm like, well, everyone is following, you know, a model. What do you mean? And she goes, well, no, I don't think any of your people follow the model, because every time you tell me about this client or that client or this team or that team, she said, every time you always say, well, they've tweaked the model this way and he's tweaked the model that way. So Martha, what you're describing, and I said, well, that's because it's not one size fits all. One time in Gary's small mastermind, again, I remember him pounding his fist on the whiteboard with all the circles. He got impatient with a couple of us in the room, pounding his fist. He said, listen, people, this is a model. It's not perfection. He said, this is just a model. And he said, if you're going to deviate from the model, just make sure you have good reason. Just make sure you're understanding why. So yeah, you could certainly do it that way. You could do that. So this is the model we're working with, but at 7th level, you replace yourself. You're no longer involved in the day-to-day running of the company. You're still the owner or the part owner. Sometimes when we pick our replacement talent, one of the reasons we get that person is by giving them part ownership. The key about level 7, you still receive an income stream. Any agent that tells you they have a 7th level team, and I think a lot of them fib, however, as long as they're receiving an income stream and they're no longer having to be there all the time, that is 7th level. Some people think, oh, you're not at 7th level unless your team is doing $1 million. Oh, you're not at 7th level unless your team is paying you, $500,000 or whatever. Wrong, you know. So one of the important things, I mean, I remember Tony DeCello, who I adore, he said to me one time, people don't understand how hard it is to get to 7th level. They don't understand how hard it is. And I said, you know, I had one team, they were doing 7th level at less than $1 million GCI. You know, she had 3 amazing hires. She found one more person to kind of come in as the leader, you know, and she was getting paid every month. So it's kind of, it's individual, but 7th level means you're no longer having to be there on much of a consistent basis. I'm an extreme. Most 7th level people won't leave the country, or excuse me, leave the state and go across the country. But if you have, anybody remember Claudia? Claudia, the girl from Columbia that used to be on stage with Gary? We're going back like 10 years ago. Claudia Maevsky, she had a story, you could barely understand her.
You talk about Claudia, the OP from Coral Gables, and she started in Washington?
Yes, yep, yeah. So in Claudia's early days, yep, that's exactly right. Oh, I'm trying to scroll so I can see your name. I just see your handsome face there. John, yeah, that's Claudia. So Claudia started out in Spokane, Washington. Gary used to interview her on stage because you're handsome in person and you don't need to have your screenshot there. You look awesome. So yeah, so Claudia, she came over from Columbia. I mean, she was a real amazing success story. And when Gary had her on stage, swear to God, we were like chuckling and we were like having to not pee in our pants from laughing because we couldn't understand her. And then they called my husband Glenn and asked him to be her coach. He said, there were some calls she'd be, oh, Glenn, and he'd just say, awesome. Anyway, she built an amazing team in Spokane. She hired a guy named John Graham to kind of be her CEO. She worked there alongside with John Graham for several years. John Graham, by the way, had never sold real estate. If you know a little bit about her team, he had been, I think, like a high school basketball coach or something like that. But he had a really good business head on his shoulders. He had a really good management head on his shoulders. She groomed him at her side. And then she moved to Miami. She got married. I think she has a baby. She moved to Miami, got married, became an OP in Miami, perfect for her because she's bilingual, and her team functions without her in Spokane. and she gets her checks every month. So most people, though, Linda McKissick talks about seventh level and talks about still stopping in once a week for a few hours and still being a bit of a leader. Chris Heller, another example, his team's in San Diego. He did move to Austin at the time that he took the executive position with KW. He'd fly back there now and then and visit, and it was a big deal. Sometimes he'd do a training with his team. It gives you the options to do something else. You could pursue expansion, go somewhere else temporarily and start a team there. You could pursue a totally different career, hobbies, travel, family time. Maybe you phase into your retirement. For me, seventh level, I was able to expand my speaking business and expand my coaching business. My favorite thing is doing this today in person. My favorite thing in the world. If I could do 2 classes, 3 classes a week, I don't mind the planes, I don't mind the hotels, it's my favorite thing. My second favorite thing is coaching. I love helping agents. So I stayed in a related field. But, the point is, it gives you options because you're not committed to so much day-to-day real estate responsibilities. So I ask now, what does seventh level mean to you? I coach a team. A couple of them are on here today. Carol, I can only see a handful of faces at once, so I don't know if Carol Poche, she's the leader of the Key Finders team. You all heard me refer to the Key Finders team a lot yesterday. They're the #1 team in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Remember, and Carol works it with a partner named Jeffrey. For years, I'm coaching them and they're talking about, well, one day when we go seventh level, one day when we go seventh level. It's finally one time I'm talking to them and I said, I have a question. What does seventh level mean to you? And Carol said something like, and Carol, it may have changed. Carol said something like, well, I'd like to come in maybe 3 days a week, just in the morning and kind of do some trainings and do some this or that. And I thought, oh, totally different definition than what it meant to me. Seventh level to me is run that business, make sure that it thrives, make sure that the people that are working there still have happy and have great careers and are profitable and pay me an income stream. Totally different. So how active, involved, or present would you want to be at seventh level? Next big question, how much income to you? I coached a very, very successful gal in Atlanta, and we had this discussion one day. And she said, $10,000 a month. She said, if I could go seventh level, $10,000 a month. And I said, well, that's very interesting. Some people would say that's very little, but that's not enough money. I think, frankly, if you could not have to work at something and get 10 grand a month, it's amazing. I mean, it's better than any Social Security plan, right? But her answer was, she said, you know what? I'm not greedy. I would definitely be doing something else. She said, I'd have another business. I'd have another income stream. She goes, it would be more important to me that the team lives on, that the people on the team still get to prosper and make a good living. She said, and I'd want to make sure there was lots of upside for whoever took my place so that they stick around. So it's how much income do you? For some people, gosh, if they didn't have to sell real estate anymore and could get a few thousand a month, for a long, long time, they'd be happy. I worked with another team. The longtime agent had groomed her assistant. The assistant had been with her over 20 years, started as an assistant, then got a license, then worked buyers, then worked listings. And I was working with the two of them to transition the veteran agent out and away and pretty much transition, transfer, sell, whatever the business to Jenny, the longtime assistant / teammate who had been groomed and been there over 20 years. The leader, I won't say her name because a lot of you might recognize it. The leader had a magic number, 5 grand a month. She said, I want 5 grand a month, and then the rest of the business is for Jenny. Whether it goes up, whether it goes down, the rest of the business is for Jenny. If she triples the business, I don't care, good for her. She said, I want 5,000 a month. That to her was the magic number. There are all different ways that you at seventh level would be paid. I'm turning away just because I'm keep looking at my little chat window here. One way of being paid as the leader, as the transitioning 7th level leader, is a percentage of the GCI. You could just plain and simple, you've turned your team over, someone else is in charge of now running it. And you're going to get at the end of every month or at the end of every quarter, you're going to get a percentage of the GCI. Another way is a percentage of the profit. Now, if you're the leader leaving, I love the percentage of GCI. Because the GCI, is there ever any confusion about what the GCI is? Yes or no? You know what it is. Profit is much more confusing. What are they writing off? What are they deducting? What are they not? If I am the one leaving as the leader, as I did, the deal that we negotiated real hard, Judy and I, was to get a percentage of the GCI every month. If you are the one that's going to stay and run the business, if you're the person that's taking over and in charge of paying me, you don't want to necessarily pay on GCI. You want to pay on the profit. Bonusing people. Gary Keller has a theory. He doesn't like us paying on GCI. He says you could bring somebody in on your team and they might double your GCI, but if they're spending a whole bunch of money to do it, your profit could go down. Does that make sense? But anyway, these are two ways to do it. One way is a percentage of the GCI. One way is the percentage of the profit. One way is a flat fee, as I explained with the girl Jenny. Her leader told her and told me, figure out a way where I'm going to get $5,000 a month. Now, what I said to Jenny was, does that sound like a lot for you to be responsible for as you take this business over? Again, Jenny'd been there over 20 years, so she knows a lot about the business. She knows all the steps. She knows the agents, she knows the staff, she knows the marketing programs, she knows their culture, she knows all about the business. And my only question to Jenny was, how do you feel about that number? And she'd say, well, Ray, I don't know. How should I feel about it? And I said, well, if you believe you can really increase this business, then it's great to just have the flat fee. If you believe you might be able to double the business, bring on some more agents, bring on some better systems, then having a flat fee every month is awesome. It's a fixed expense. Remember we talked about fixed versus variable. I said, on the other hand, if you believe you could be in for some lean months, if you believe that there could be a lot of months where the leader maybe doesn't deserve that much money because the business isn't doing as well, then you don't like the flat fee. And then the final bullet point here, the payoff, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be semi-annually, or it could be annually. It's whatever you agree to. And there's there's so few teams that really ever get to the 7th level. You don't have a lot of people to ask. You don't have a lot of models to follow. So let's talk about compensating the replacement a little more. Gary Keller has a saying about everybody on our team, especially when you get to these higher level hires. Groom from within. Groom from within. You know, when we hired Jeff, and I was going to ask Martha. Martha won't remember. Was Jeff already there when you joined us, Martha, or had we not hired him yet? Do you even remember?
I think, oh no, I don't remember. It was very, no, I don't remember. I don't think he was. I kind of think he wasn't, but I'm so brain dead on that.
We hired Jeff in 2002 and Martha joined us in 2002. So it could have been before or after. So I'm going to tell you my Jeff story quickly. And again, I promised all of you we'll be done before 12:30. We'll be done way before 12:30. We'll probably be done before 11:30.
I have a question too, Ray.
Yeah. Okay.
About the DISC profile of your hires.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see if you would talk about that at all.
Sure. don't get me in trouble. Some market centers are a little stricter on this and some are others. I mean, when KPA first came out, we like weren't allowed to talk about the disc.
Oh, okay.
I think it's loosened up now, and some people, like I said to you, I like both. I believe, you know, and it always depends on the person. Gary will say it about the KPA, he'll say it about the disc, that, you know, it's not 100% of our hiring.
Okay.
I believe if you want somebody who's going to be great with listings, they better have some darn D. Listings, you have to have tenacity. You have to follow up. You have to be a bulldog. Listings, you have to be a lot more rejection proof. You know, I'll ask all of you, is there more rejection in working with buyers or with sellers? Trust me, a lot more with sellers.
Salary.
Yeah, not that we don't have heartbreak with buyers and they buy from another agent or they buy at an open house or they change their mind. But there's way more anxiety, I'd call it. There's more pressure with sellers. So since the D is the aggressive, get it done, you know, get it done, high achiever, results oriented behavior, if you're going to get someone that's going to do listings, they better have a good amount of D. Now this could vary demographically. If you're in a really sweet little town where everybody is trusting and keeps their word and a lot's done on a handshake and stuff, you might not need someone with so much D. In most cases, the D is the the I is more the buyer agent gene, the buyer agent letter. The I is the friendly, the vivacious, the warm and fuzzy, the sociable, loves to bond. However, I believe, again, if you're in a really friendly town, maybe not so much. I believe our industry is becoming more and more and more competitive. And I want my buyer agent to have a decent amount of I. However, I still want them to have at least midline or better D. Martha, you worked in LA. It's a dog-eat-dog market. It's a really competitive market. You got to be really fast. You got to be really aggressive. You got to be really on top of things. So I believe anyone in sales better have D at least at the midline or above. On the listing side, I want the D higher than the I. On the buyer side, I want the I higher than the D. And that's in a perfect world. It doesn't mean you might not want to hire someone that breaks that mold a little bit because of their past, because of their record, because of their personality, because they've become highly recommended. And let's talk about assistants. They used to say that you wanted the SC profile for admin. Glenn and I, and again, we work with really high producing agents, so I'm biased. We said years ago, if you're hiring an assistant, especially a high level one, I mean, if it's a lower level runner one that's just doing some checklist stuff and running some errands, I don't really care what their profile is. But when you're hiring your couple of key people, your number one admin that's working right under your direction, possibly even your number one and number two, we figured out, they used to say you need the S and the C. The S is very stable, very security oriented. They don't job hop. They don't relationship hop. They really like security and stability. And the C, of course, is that detail gene. Careful, cautious, compliant, really dot the I's, cross the T's, a little analytical, very good with details. We used to say the SC profile is what you wanted in an assistant. What Glenn and I discovered after a few years, if you're going to work for a really aggressive, high assertive agent, and you're going to be doing at their side as far as their admin support, you better have some darn D. You can't be a wallflower. You can't be afraid of your shadow. You better have some D. Because otherwise the boss just steamrollers over you, and those poor little people, they just don't stay. It's just too stressful for them. So it depends, you know, it varies. I mean, I've had so many coaching clients be afraid to hire an admin because there's D showing up. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a bad thing. You know, for me, I want an admin that's got some D. I don't mind them challenging me. Well, they may want to do things their way. I said, you know what? I'm willing to hear their way. Their way might be better, but I'm also going to pull rank and say, I'm always willing to hear your way. But you got to be willing to do it my way if that's what I decide. So does that help you a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm so sorry I got you off track, but
Nope,
I
it's
just
okay.
know that, you know, that's been my biggest issue when I've been building my teams,
Mhm.
is how to hire specific people for specific jobs.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I mean, that's where mine has always failed,
Right.
where to be self-sustaining. So I was just wondering about that. But, you know, I just got into coaching again and we're just doing this. But
Right.
you were
Right.
going to say something about Jeff and I totally interrupted you. So I'm so sorry. You were going to
So-
talk about when you hired Jeff.
Right. Right. But that's okay. That wasn't a bad interruption.
No,
and
I really
that's-
love that information.
that's helpful to everybody. Look, we're talking about hiring and talent and stuff.
Mhm.
So the profiling is a very big part of that. Quickly to tell you about Jeff, we were at the first Keller Williams Market Center. It finally opened. We were the big giant cheeses there. And Jeff Pantanella, at the time, I think he was 29 or 30. He had just landed himself in LA. He had originally come from the East Coast, then he had been up in Portland, then he had been in San Francisco. This was the year 2002. For the couple of years, he was just trying to find his way. He had a college degree, but his college degree was actually in art. He's an artist, a painter. Maybe he minored in business, I don't know. And he had gotten chewed up and spit out by all the dot-coms back then that had turned into dot-gons. He had been promised all kinds of, stock options, this and that, and then the places would close up, and he was just really kind of lost. And his parents said to him, you should become a realtor. You'd probably be good in real estate. And so he said, well, gosh, where would I begin? And his parents, who actually are from Florida, they said, and this was back in 2002, they said, go to a Keller Williams. Keller Williams is supposed to be the fastest growing company, and they're really good with training. So he knew nothing about real estate. He was in an apartment in Hollywood. Our office was by the beach. He got in his car and he drove all the way to Marina Del Rey to the Keller Williams office. He must have passed umpteen Remaxes, Coldwell Bankers, Prudentials. There was probably one right around the block from him in Hollywood. But nope, his parents said, find a KW. So he comes to KW and he's meeting with our OP. Maybe there was no team leader at that time. And he's walking around the office and no real estate license. He knows nothing about real estate. And he walks up to the sales board, and the sales board says, busy blondes, busy blondes, busy blondes, busy blondes, busy blondes. And so he looks at the owner and he goes, what's busy blondes? And the owner says, oh, well, that's a team here. And he goes, what's a team? And she says, well, some agents work independently, but some agents actually work like in a small group, and we call that a team. And he goes, where are they? I want to meet them. So he prances over to my partner, Judy, because I was out of town, and he talks to Judy. And then I'm on the phone with her that night. And she goes, oh, there's a guy that I met today and he wants to interview with us. And I said, oh, as a buyer agent? We're not really looking for a buyer agent. She goes, no, he doesn't want to be a buyer agent. And I said, oh, as an admin? I said, we don't really need any admin right now. She goes, no, he doesn't want to be an admin. And I go, well, what's he want to be? And she goes, I think he wants to be us. And she started to laugh. And she goes, no, really? I mean, she goes, if he's a buyer agent, he won't stay. He's got big goals and big dreams. She goes, I think he wants to be us. And I'm like, well, I don't need any hotshot guy, young guy coming in here thinking he's going to be us. So she goes, well, he's pretty interesting though. She goes, when you get back in town, you'll meet him. So this little guy wouldn't leave us alone. He starts going to school to get his license. And every few days he's schlepping, it was probably an hour and a half drive or something. He's schlepping all the way from the heart of Hollywood, all the way to the beach. And he keeps showing up. When am I going to get to talk to you? When am I going to get to talk to you? And I'm like, yeah, we're busy. Finally, we sit down and talk with him. And he was really sharp. He was really ambitious. And we talked to him a little bit, get to know him. We're so new with KW. Gary's our personal coach. Gary's trying to teach us about this whole career visioning process, that you have multiple meetings with people. And he says, we finally say to him, and I'm not going to get the order right because it's been so many years. We finally said to him after like a second or third meeting, we said, look, we really like you. We think you're willing to work hard. We just don't know what to do with you. We don't know what to do with you. You're not going to want to be an agent for that long. Judy and I, we don't need someone else really taking listings. We're fine with listings. And we're not quite sure what to do with you. And we said to him, you know what, why don't you, we said, we've met with us for several times. You're in real estate school. It's funny. He bluffed us a lot. You can read a couple lines from a book and then act like you know the whole book. You know what I mean? So we were telling him that we're just learning more about how to run this business. That's one of the things we're very involved with, is learning how to run the business. So he'd start, well, you know, wish I could remember the names of some of the authors, but one of them at the time was Donald Trump. He goes, well, you know, what Donald Trump writes in The Art of the Deal is that you got to do this, and you got to do that. Like, we were impressed. And then he says, you know, when Jack Welch, you know, wrote his book about blah, 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 you know, he always says blah, 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 blah. And so we're like super impressed. Well, little did we know, he had like run to the library and just like checked out a few books to sort of learn about running a business, because we told him that was what we were like kind of, you know, struggling with and challenged with. So finally we said to him, you figure out what you can do for us and we'll meet again. We don't know where we'd put you, but we are impressed with you. You figure out what you could do for us. So we make a meeting a week later, and he comes back in, and really smart. And he says, I don't know your business well enough to possibly tell you what I can do for you. He said, but let me ask you this. He said, there must be something that I could do for you that the two of you would rather not do. He goes, you got a big business here. You got a lot of people. You got a lot of sales on that board over there. He says, there must be something that the two of you have to do day in and day out, week in and week out. There must be something that the two of you do that you would rather have me do for you. You'd rather teach me how to do it. He goes, just tell me what it is and I'll do it. Can anybody type into the chat box what we came up with? Because we almost started laughing and we both said it at the same time. What is it, if you're building a team, leading a team, what is it you have to do? You're supposed to do every single day, and maybe we don't always like doing it.
Lead gen.
Ding, 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 ding. Doreen got it. Lead gen. Yeah, what we said was prospecting. And I swear to God, we go prospecting, and he goes, I'll do it. And he goes, what is it? So we hired Jeff as a door knocker. He would come in every morning, you know, sit with us, brainstorm with us a little bit, and then by 9:30 or 10, he'd go out there and he'd pound on doors. We told him we'd give him 20% commission. We taught him a basic script, the old Mike Ferry script. When do you plan on moving? Oh, when do you plan on moving? Oh, how long have you been at this address? Where'd you move from? How'd you happen to pick this area? And then the last question, it's a 5-question script, is if you were to move, where would you go next? And we taught him that little script. Don't need a license to say that in California. And out he went. He started in July in the hot, hot, blazing sun. His car was a frickin' jalopy. He parked it blocks away from wherever he was door knocking so nobody would see it. I do believe for about the first 60 days, we gave him a little base. I think we gave him maybe $1,500 or $2,000 a month just so he could eat. And we figured, worst that could happen, he falls on his face, he doesn't bring us in any business, and we were out a couple $1,000 bucks. Well, guess what? It worked out. It was his second day or his third day out there door knocking. He knocked on Leonard Romo's door. We had our 4th of July flag. So he started out his script every knock. When they opened the door, he pointed the flag. Hi there, my name is Jeff Pantanella, and he had a name badge. Busy Blonde Team. He said, you know, those nice girls that bring you all these flags every year. And people would smile and look at all the American flags. And he'd say, and I'm just here to ask you a question. When do you plan on moving? And then he'd go through the script. On day 2 or 3, they said, well, as a matter of fact, we were just talking this morning. We'd like to get ourselves moved before school starts at the beginning of September. We're really ready for a bigger house. And they said, come on in. And he was like, I need to use my phone for a minute. This is my third day doing this and I don't know what to say next. So needless to say, he came back over, and our deal with him was if he brought in a listing, he was going to get 20%. And if that listing was also a buyer, we were going to pay him our buyer split, which was 35. We weren't going to turn it over to the buyer team. He was also going to be allowed to work that buyer. He had to learn the business if he was ever going to be, oh, let me backtrack. Right at the time we hired him, we said to him, I wish we'd have met you in another couple years. There's something called seventh level. And sooner or later, we're going to need this seventh level replacement person to take the business into the future, but it's too soon. And he said, well, what is seventh level? And we explained that at some point you train someone, you groom someone, they learn the business, they shadow you, they get to understand all the ins and outs of your culture, the way you treat your clients, the way you handle things, and that sooner or later they start to take on more and more responsibilities. Remember, I described this yesterday, and as they take on more, they start to get some bigger percentages of the profits, of the income, and you start to step back more. We, the leaders, step back more and take less. And eventually they take over and they run the business. However, Judy and I always would take a small share every month. We'd have an income stream. That's what seventh level is. And he almost started jumping up and down. And he said, that's me. I'm your guy. That's me. I'm your 7 level guy. I'm it. I'm level 7. That's me. So we hired him to knock doors. We figured he'll learn the listing side of the business as he gets these listings. He'll shadow us. If he gets any of these people as buyers, he'll work the buyers, we'll help them. And on day 3, hit the jackpot. Listed that house for $469. They were moving up to Westchester, which is by the airport. They bought a house for 500 something, and we were off to the races. So I don't know why I brought that up. Maybe just because earlier I kept promising I would explain the Jeff thing. And it worked out and as time went on, we expanded his role. And he was with us over 10 years. He definitely did take us to the 7th level status. Unfortunately, in the final years, he got bored, he got antsy. He was trying to always looking at a new shiny object, always looking at a different thing. In the final couple of years, he'd be going off track. I wish you could see my hands. And I'd have to slap him back on track. And then he'd go off track again, and I'd have to slap him back. And I said to Judy, you know what? We need to look for another replacement. He's not going to be in it to win it. And she kept saying, no, we've trained him. He's been with us so long. Judy's a higher S. High S's like stability. They don't like change. I have hardly any S. I'm up for the change. So long story short, at the end of 10 years, we politely exited him because I got too tired. And I said, look, I want to do other things. I want to really, be 7th level. I want to do other things. And I can't be worrying all the time that if he's in it to win it or if he's staying or going. So that's the story about.
Well, I think you were talking about talent seeking opportunity, him being that very driven.
Yeah, very, very driven. We've had 2 leaders, and both of them, and Martha, I won't name a name, but one of them you are just about to get to know really well. We've had 2 leaders, and both of them are sorry they didn't stay. Both of them admit if they knew then what they know now, they would still be running the Busy Blondes.
Me too.
Well, if you'd stayed, you would be running it for sure.
I remember that's why I'm called the Busy Blonde now, but y'all always were I was always called the Busy Blonde daughter. And it always, yes, I wished I had stayed in California, period.
And Martha has branded herself in Houston as Busy Blonde, but she spells it the real way, B-U-S-Y, because Judy and I trademarked the B-I-Z-Z-Y, and when we turned it over to our last partners, part of what they paid us for was that name. And even though very sadly, they're not even running the business anymore, they still own the name. So Martha is branded as the Busy Blonde Team with BUSY. If you're
I
ever
will
looking,
always be a busy blonde.
yep, if you're ever looking for her. So grooming from within. If you think you're going to go 7th level and you want to be out of here in 6 months, you're probably dreaming. I don't want to say it's impossible. This really needs to be a 2 or 3 year plan. In order for it to work, that person has got to really learn the ins and outs of your business, your company, your culture, the way you speak to your client, the way you solve certain problems. We're all very different. Judy and I ran a warm, fuzzy business. We had super client care. Some people laughed at us and told us we were overstaffed. We might have been overstaffed, but we could afford it, and we wanted people to feel really well taken care of. We wanted our agents to be really happy where we were. We had parties, we had get-togethers, you know, we had things at our homes, we had things at restaurants. It was very important to us. Other teams run with a totally different culture. I'm not making judgment. It's just that if someone's going to come in and take over your business, they better run it pretty similar to the way you do. Otherwise, it won't last. The clients won't stay. The referrals won't keep coming. Again, sadly, that is kind of what happened with our last partners. And we can talk about that today, and yet we don't have to. Let me ask you all, because we're Zooming, I know that some Zoom trainers don't even take breaks because they figure if you're running to the restroom, whatever, or getting more coffee, you're just doing it. It's 10:35. Yesterday we took a break at 10:30. Give me a chat box. Do you want a 10-minute break right now, or do you want me to keep going so we can just end a little earlier today? I don't want to lose any of you, because if you came in this morning, it's because you want to hear the rest of this about the 7th level. And then we're going to talk a little bit about standards, expectations, and a bit about branding yourself. So give me a yes if you want a break. Give me a no if you want us to just keep going and you're fine. Pop open your chat box. Let me get at least a handful of you. I'm not getting any answers. Okay, right now we've got over 20 people. It's given me a count, 21, 22. Well, maybe it only counts when people, okay. I'm fine, keep going. 10-minute break, no break, going. You can keep going, you can keep going. All right, so my one dear person that wanted the break, I am gonna keep going, so please pick up your laptop, pick up your iPad, take it with you into the restroom. And I'm going to keep going, and I'll make you a promise. The one person that wanted the break, if you come back and you say, oh, wait a minute, you know, go back or whatever, I will. I'll just repeat anything that you think you may have missed. Okay, thank you all. So grooming from within, really, really important. The longer this person stays at your side, the better your outcome is going to be as you transition out. Gary Keller told a story recently in his mastermind, and I'm going to hope I say it the right way. Let's say you have a doctor, a general physician, a doctor, and the doctor has his brand new nurse or even technician. However, this is the kind of doctor where that technician sits in with the doctor on every appointment. Every appointment, checkup, diagnosis, evaluating the x-ray, evaluating the blood test, every single thing that that doctor does, this nurse practitioner, you know, medical technician person is there in the room. At the end of 6 months, that let's call it nurse practitioner, that nurse practitioner is going to be able to answer at least 50% of the questions that any patient would have. At the end of 6 months, that, I'll repeat it, because They've been in there with the doctor day in and day out. At the end of 6 months, that nurse practitioner, they're going to be able to problem solve, diagnose it, know the right medicine, know the right advice to give at least 50% of the time. Gary says at the end of 2 years, that nurse practitioner, medical technician is going to be able to diagnose, know what to do, answer the questions, give the right guidance for 95% of the stuff, because they've been right there. One of the reasons it worked so well with Jeff for 10 years is for the first couple years, we were glued at the hip. Tim Heil, if those of you know that name, he talks about the first time that he ever considered giving up the listing leverage and having another listing person. Tim Heil built his team like all the rest of us. He was the listing guy, and then he had buyer agents. When he hired, and I believe it was a female, when he hired her, he said, for the next 6 months, we were attached at the hip. He said, other than going to the bathroom, where I went, she went. Where I go, she goes. She was at his side on every phone call, every phone conversation, every negotiation, every price reduction, every listing appointment. She was glued to him at the hip for the first many months. He said, then he could let her go because she was going to do it exactly like he did. She was going to do it his way, and he could start to let her go alone. So the grooming of someone is really, really important. All right, standards and non-negotiables. This will blow your mind, everybody. I do this every year at Family Reunion. There's 8 bullet points, and every time, again, every time that it happens, you can hear a pin drop. So remember, this is my opinion, and I'm talking here about salespeople. The salespeople, it's herding cats. So these are my standards and my non-negotiables. I will not hire anyone that isn't full-time in real estate. Everyone wants to make 100,000. Everyone wants to make 100,000 in their first year. If I pulled, if I interviewed 100 people that want to join my team and be agents, and I said, how much do you want to make? 99, and we're going to say 100,000. How are you going to do that in 4 or 5 hours a day? I'm sorry. There are agents, you all tell me, and I'll take a nod. Are there agents at your market center that are smart, hardworking, they're showing up every day, they're doing what they're supposed to do? Well, notwithstanding COVID, but they were, and they're still having trouble making a lot of money? Yes or no? So if that's, how does someone think they're going to do it 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day? So full-time agents, that's my mess. That's my requirement. I don't want them to have other jobs. I don't, sorry, they can learn somewhere else and then come to me. Can they financially sustain themselves? Those of you that have been around the block for a while, how many of you have ever hired an agent on your team? You've invested into them. You've trained them. You oversee them. You coach them. You mentor them. And at the end of 2 or 3 months, they leave and get a job because they need income. It happens a lot. So my rule is 6 months of savings. Now, you may be in a warmer, fuzzier market where you're confident that they can get a deal in their first 30 days and it'll close 30 days later. LA is a cutthroat, hard market. And I don't want to invest in someone that is living hand to mouth. You've got to have a cushion in this career. And now one person once asked me, well, do you ask for their bank statement? And I'm like, oh, that's a high C question. No, but what I do say is, let me ask you something, Brad. How much a month does it take, do you have to spend to live? What's it cost you to live every month? And they'll always say, huh? Or what? Or what do you mean? And I ask it again. I say, no, just your basic bare bones. How much does it cost you for your rent or your mortgage? How much does it cost you for your car? How much does it cost you if you have student loan payments or anything like that? How much does it cost you to get food on the table, pay for some kind of health insurance, put gas in your car? Ballpark, what's it cost? And they'll give me a number. And if they're young, it could be a low number. They might still live at home. They might have roommates. So they'll say, it costs me $2,000 a month, $1,500 a month. So I'll say, great. If it's $2,000 a month, I'll say, great. 2 times 6 is $12,000. I'll say, do you have $12,000 in savings? Well, no. Why do you ask? Or what do you mean? And some of them, if they're living at home or they have roommates, it could be super low. It might be 1,000. I'll say, do you have 6,000 in savings? And I say, we're not hiring anybody that doesn't have some money in savings, because it could be 2 or 3 months before you see a check. It could take weeks before you have your first couple sales pending. And then it could take another 2 months before they close. And sometimes they get postponed or they fall through. And this business, it only costs a few $100s to get into it. You have the right to make more money than doctors, lawyers, accountants, so many business people. I'm not going to take somebody where they've got 20 bucks in the bank because I lose them. We were a work from the office team. I talked about this yesterday. Again, this is all notwithstanding COVID. Right now, we're all doing the best we can. That's why I'm on Zoom and I'm not with you in person. However, our culture was that we work from the office. This is a business, this is a job, this is a career. And everyone was in by 9 or 9:30. We had lots of meetings, we had lots of trainings. They were supposed to be on the phone in the mornings. Most of the phone time with these teams, it's warm calling, it's not cold calling. If you think these teams that tell you, oh, my agents, they're on the phone every morning from 9 to 11. They're on the phone every morning from 9 to 12. Yes, they're telling the truth. However, it's warm calls. They're not cold calling. They're calling past clients. They're calling their sphere. They're calling on open house sheets. They're following up, with some other leads. If there is internet business, maybe they're trying to track down those people. But it's from the office. And then we really believed in buyer consultations, heavy duty. Almost all the buyers would meet us at the office, have a consultation. And even if they didn't have a consultation, the office was our meeting place. We trained our agents, you're going to ride around in the car with a buyer. That's how you bond. That's how you develop rapport. That's how you get to talk to them more about what they liked and didn't like about the house you just saw. We were very, very hands-on. Yes, occasional exception. The houses they're looking at, none of them are close to the office, so we're going to meet there. I'm just talking about the basic rule of thumb. And here's what I feel so strongly about, you guys. And if you're new in the business, then it applies to you. If you're not new in the business, it applies to the people we hire. You can't get really good at something by working from home. I'm sorry. You got to be around it. Think of an athlete. How does an athlete get really good at something? I wish we were interactive because we'd have a conversation. Most people say by practicing. Yep, by practicing. And by being around it, by studying it, by watching it. A lot of athletes, they watch videos. The football players, the quarterback, they watch videos of how the guy throws it. The basketball players, they watch videos of people taking those three-point shots. How do you get really good at a hobby? Any kind of a hobby. Being around it, being exposed to it. If you're new in this business and once we have COVID away, spend as much time at the office as you can. You've got to eat, breathe, and sleep real estate. It's an encompassing business. There is so much to learn. You're not going to learn it when you go home and turn on Dr. Oz. And this business about people, well, I have no appointments, so I'm going to just go work from home. Work from home? You're turning on the TV. You're playing with your dog. You're on Facebook. Don't give me this work from home crap. You know what? We can't help you if we can't hear you. The office is where the energy is. It's where the synergy is. It's where new listings get talked about. It's where price reductions get talked about. It's where some seller made a counteroffer 20,000 lower, and maybe the buyer didn't take it. But now you can say to your team, hey, everybody, the sellers on Elm Drive that are insisting on $399, they just countered someone at $379. Who do you have? Who do you have that maybe you should be taking over there? it's Grand Central, it's home base. My quote and my script, as I told everyone when I interviewed them and hired them, but when I interviewed, I said, are you okay with, we work from here every day. Unless it's your designated day off, we work from here. Now, if it's 8 in the morning or 8 at night, you're welcome to work from home. However, we can't help you if we can't hear you. Okay, enough said. Time block daily lead gen and lead follow-up. That's a standard. I'm like, look, you're not going to book doctor's appointment in the morning. You're not going to book showing appointments if you can help it. You're not going to book inspections if you can help it. We want you here in the morning. That's our time to be on the phone and make sure things are being followed up on and make sure that new business is getting cultivated. And I highly recommend the morning, highly, highly. I did a team call with Lori Reeder years ago. All of them insisted, I think she might have had like 8 buyer agents at that time. At that time, she didn't have any listing specialists. They all insisted they were willing to do 2 hours a day of lead gen, but they wanted to all do it at different times. Some wanted to do it at home, some wanted to do it at the office. Some wanted to do it in the evenings. They argue 5 to 7 is the best time to catch people. Other people were thinking it was in the morning because you get it out of the way. There were a couple lunchers. I think lunchtime is the best because, you know, more people will answer. Even if they're working, they'll answer their phone if they're on their lunch. A million excuses. And I said, I will agree to anything as long as it's all at the same time. Because I know if you all come to the office and do it at the same time, it'll get done. You're going to lean on each other, you're going to support each other, and it'll get done. I don't care if it's from 5 to 7. I don't care if it's from 6 to 8 at the end of the workday. I said, but we're not getting off this call till everybody agrees. So some of you, type it in the chat box. What do you think we all finally agreed to? What was the block of time that we all finally agreed to at the end of that call? I'm going to make a few of you answer me. Let me take a guess. After going around and around about lunchtime, dinner time, mid-afternoon, late morning, first thing in the morning, what did we all come up with? You're right. Good for you, Janice. Good for you, Doreen. Yeah, they came up with 9 to 11. And actually, and I could send you her team calendar if anybody was curious. She's always given me permission to share it. Actually, they all come in at 8:30. From 8:30 to 9, they sometimes have a mini training. Otherwise, they do warm up, they do high five, they get themselves all ready, and then they hit that phone from 9 to 11. And they hold each other accountable. They don't want any slackers. They get mad at each other. She doesn't even have to, like, you know, beat them up to do this. This call I had with them must have been at least 5 or 6 years ago. They still do it today. And I could send you their team calendar. Okay. Open houses every weekend. Now this will vary from place to place. Martha, if you're there, on a scale of 1 to 10, how productive was the Busy Blonde team as far as open house business? Do you remember?
Oh, yes, I remember. It was, LA was very successful. And I mean, just having it, you would put out 30, 40 signs for every open house we'd have, and we'd have hundreds of people. It was awesome.
Yeah. Our open house business, and part of that reason, everybody, remember I talked to you yesterday about how we don't use lock boxes. So when you're in a market where lock boxes aren't used, you're going to have more crowded open houses because agents are basically lazy or agents are busy. So if they can send their clients to open houses, they'll do that instead of fussing so much with the lock boxes. And it's just, it's a really popular open house market. So one of our standards was open houses every weekend. And the big day in LA is Sunday, not Saturday. Some towns I hear Saturday's a better day. Now, this was a standard and a non-negotiable. Now, I want to ask Martha another question about for the most part, did you guys hate being obligated to those Sunday open houses, or did you guys kind of look forward to it?
I look forward to them.
Yeah. Our agents were mad if we didn't have an open house for them. I mean, at our height, we had 8 buyer agents. And once in a while, because we're in a low inventory market, once in a while, we might not have 8 open houses that Sunday. I'm telling
We
you.
always picked up buyers, always,
Yeah.
at every open house.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why my agents, our agents, they were mad if they didn't have an open house, because that was, they were missing out. They always picked up buyers. Now, that's also why my agents hated the internet leads. I don't think Martha was with us because you didn't have Boomtown back then. In 2010, we got Boomtown. And Glenn, who Martha knows, my husband, who came on for a while as our sales manager, Glenn was in charge of the buyer team as a sales manager, and Glenn was in charge of the Boomtown system. So he would monitor the back end. And we had maybe 5 or 6 buyer agents. We had Josh then, we had Brad, a couple of them that Martha remembers. And they hated the Boomtown leads. I mean, in the beginning, for the first few days, they were all excited. Oh my gosh, we're gonna get internet leads, we're gonna get internet leads. They hated them because internet leads are a bitch. And even back then when Boomtown was newer, it wasn't as easy as sitting at an open house and picking up 1 or 2 warm, fuzzy buyers. You've already met them, you've already seen them face to face, you've already made an appointment with them. How much easier is that than like grinding out Boomtown leads? The funny thing is, Glenn would monitor the back end of the Boomtown, and he had a limit. If somebody didn't, and it was a round robin, they rotated into everybody's inbox or everybody's phone equally. But if you didn't respond by the 2nd or 3rd hour, he would take you out of the rotation for the next week. That was your punishment. You could take yourself out if you were busy or out of town or something, but if you were in the Boomtown loop and you didn't respond, your punishment was you'd be no Boomtown leads for the next week. They were happy. They were happy if we took them out of the rotation. So we got rid of Boomtown. So long story short, open houses are a gold mine. I love to do open house trainings with the people that I coach because I think that we were the best of the best, Martha. Even though LA is busy at open houses, I bet you our statistic, everybody, 47% of our buyer business were buyers that came from open house. 47%. And guess what? 20% of our listing business were listings that came from open house, where we said the right questions and booked appointments with sellers.
Where I'm at in Texas, I don't like open houses because sometimes you only get 2 or 3 people through.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's so different, because the open houses that we had when I was on your team was just phenomenal. I cannot sit an open house and not wish that they all were like that. I mean, it was awesome.
It's very busy in LA. However, like Martha said, we purchased 200 signs. You're going to see pictures in a few minutes. And we hired a guy with a big truck to come at the crack of dawn every Sunday. And we gave him a list of the addresses, and we gave him a map with dots on it where all the signs were supposed to go. So we went crazy with the signs because that was our lead gen open houses. In any event, it was expected, and no one minded. It was expected, unless you were like out of town or you had a wedding or something. I mean, Sunday was a big work day. Commitment to meetings, trainings, classes, and events. You know what? We want people that are learning based. We want people that dig it. Remember Martha said yesterday, she goes, oh yeah, we had lots of meetings. I said to her, did we have too many? She goes, oh, no, we like the meetings. We like the meetings. If your people are dreading your meetings or putting them off or not showing up or making excuses, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. You know, if there's value, they want the meetings. We even got to the point, and I think it was after you, Martha, that the 11 o'clock Monday, like sales meeting in the conference room, where we go over open houses and everything, we got to the point where if me or Judy or Glenn got really distracted and hung up in something, Brad would just start the meeting. Because they were there and they wanted the meeting. They wanted to talk about the open houses. And we would role play and practice scripts and practice objections and stuff in the meeting.
That was one of the things that I absolutely loved about your team. So there's differences in teams, I can say for sure, like you were saying, the family oriented, the respect for the people you hire, they will stay.
Mhm.
the micromanaging type, you know, it's not as warm and fuzzy, because we do get rejection, and we needed that. And then another thing is, one thing that I have no problem with, what Ray and Judy would do, is if I'm on the phone with a buyer or a seller and I'm trying to pick them up, they would say, put them on hold. And this is what you say.
Yeah.
And so they give you a different perspective. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's great. And it wasn't like criticism, it was for growth. And it was amazing, because I tell everyone, I learned everything I needed to know on the Busy Blonde team. I mean, I really did. Like, because LA is very cutthroat. And when you come back, like, Texas is not cutthroat. It's just now getting as savvy as LA.
Mhm.
Just now.
Right.
That's 12 years or so later.
Right.
But
Well, see, Martha was really learning based. And in our interview process, we would ask the agents and say, now, if you're on the phone with a client and we think we could help you say something differently or take a different angle, if we walk up to you and do the T sign, like the referee does, the timeout, that if we walk up to you and do the T sign and tell you to put that call on hold, you know, how does that feel? How will that feel? Are you okay with that? Or are you going to be mad like we're trying to butt in? And because we did that all the time, we'd walk over, we'd like, put them on hold, hold on. And we'd say, no, Martha, what you want to tell him is, by writing the offer now, at least he can tie up the house, or he can secure the house, and then let it be his decision. Then let him sleep on it and let it be his decision. Because right now, if he doesn't write that offer right now, he won't get to make this decision tomorrow. And she,
yeah, that
okay,
was
thanks.
very, very helpful. And
That kind of coaching, less than 30 seconds. So thank you for mentioning. But again, if your team's all remotely working, how can you do that? If everybody's working from home, I'll pick up the leads from home, I'll do the calls from home. How can you do that? You can't. And as Martha said, people would stay with us for years and years because we helped them make deals. Also, how many times we've been on the phone, on the Zoom, hours yesterday, and we've been on the phone, on the Zoom for 2 hours this morning. How many times, and I want you to put it in the chat box really fast, how many times have you heard me talk about accountability meetings? Time to have our accountability session. Weekly accountability. How many times? Put in the chat box. Okay, one person thinks I've done it many. We did, and Marcia says, well, so I'm probably not phrasing it right. I never call it accountability. Yes, we have lots of meetings and lots of trainings. And maybe this is just me. I don't like the word accountability. To me, it sounds negative. To me, it sounds scolding. Lots of the teams I coach use the phrase. So it may just be something in my own head. It might just be in my head.
I like that though, but that's it. Definitely.
Yeah.
You will be accountable to someone who makes you feel that you are trainable and not commanding. I mean, there's a difference in being a leader and the way you build a team.
Yeah, I just never called it accountability. I called it, the weekly team meeting, and then I called it the one-on-one, our one-on-ones. And even our one-on-ones, I wasn't grilling at you guys. Martha doesn't remember because it's been so many. I wasn't grilling at you. How many calls did you make? How many appointments have you set? How many showings did you go on? Our one-on-one meeting was, okay, who you're working with. How many A+ buyers do you have? Tell me their names. Okay, the Smiths, what are they looking for? How soon do you think? Oh, I'd ask another question. How many are A+ buyers? Who's going to be the next one under contract? Who's the next one? Oh, the Smiths, they'll be under contract by next week. Great. And what are they looking for? They're looking for this or that. Then we sit down a week later. Okay, you told me last week, and I'm looking at my notes. You told me last week the Smiths would be under contract by today. Are they? Well, no. Okay, what's going on? Well, now I showed, what did you show them? Oh, maybe you need to take them somewhere else. Maybe you need to show them this. Maybe you need to show them that. I never called them accountability meetings, yet we had a lot of contact because I felt like, look, you're on my team. I feel like your time is my time. You didn't make a deal, that means the team didn't make a deal. That means I didn't get paid, the company didn't get paid. Next bullet point, the team branding. Diana Kokoska used to have a saying. If you think of a sports team, yeah, thank you, Jolie, thank you. If you think of a sports team, what name is usually on the front of their jersey? I'll make it easy. The name of the team. Where is the player's name?
On the back of the jersey.
On the back of the jersey. Diana Kokoska used to talk about this all the time about teams. You know, what's on the front of the jersey? This is about the team. This is about our branding. We lost people because they wanted their own name on a flyer. We lost people sometimes because if they brought in the listing, they wanted their name on the sign or they wanted a rider on the sign. I'm like, you know, we just don't do it. It's about the brand. It's about the brand. The flyers all say Busy Blondes. The signs all say Busy Blondes. It's about the brand. Now, if it's a personal listing you help bring in, we'll alert the front desk. You know, we'll do our best to give more of those lead calls to you because we're glad. If it's your listing that you brought in, you can have first choice of sitting that open house every week. However, you know, now, can you hand out your business card? Sure. Can you even take a stapler and staple your business card to our flyer? Sure. But it's about the brand. And the final 8th bullet point and standards and non-negotiables is about income and production goals. So I ask all of you, why don't I have the production goals at the top? If you ask most teams to order your standards for their agents, all they're going to tell you is a number, 3 deals a month, you know, 10 deals a quarter. You ask most people, do you have any standards? Oh, yes, I definitely have standards. You know, are you strict with your, oh, we're strict with our standards. They better sell at least 2 a month. Why don't I have the income as the most important standard? I have it on here kind of as the least important. Anybody want to verbally tell me or type it in? Yeah, but if I was live, you guys would be shouting it out. Here's my reasoning. If they do all 7, the 8th one will come naturally. Yeah, and very good, Janice, you're right. The first 7 is focusing on the team member, on what are we going to do to help them be successful. Good point, Janice. It's all of these things are going to help them be successful under our umbrella, this structure. I just believe if they do everything, if they work full time, they have a little money in the bank, so they're not going to be scared to death in their first few weeks. They come to the office every day, they engage, they get to overhear another script. They get to overhear how someone is making a deal, closing a deal. They're going to be on the phone every day, working on their leads. They're going to be at the open houses. They're going to commit to the meetings and the trainings. They're going to be behind our brand. They do all that. I'm telling you, they'd have to be a monkey to not make sales. And that's maybe not very nice because this business isn't meant for everybody. So let me take that back. But overall, when they succumb to all of that, yeah, love it. Very, very great. Culture will bring the income. Yep, it really does. I mean, for years, I felt like we were in such momentum. Jump on our train because the train's already running. We hire you. We agree to work together. You jump on this train, just do what everybody's doing. By osmosis, you're going to be in momentum. So promoting the branding. We went to a point where we decided to get BusyWear, we called it. We got the Busy Blonde logo and we started putting on sweatshirts and t-shirts for all the girls. We had the cutest different style t-shirts and we paid for them and all the girls could wear the Busy Blonde t-shirts whenever they wanted. And then one day, one of the guys, and it wasn't Glenn or Jeff, one of the guys says, as a joke, he goes, well, where's my Busy Blonde shirt? I think it might've been Brad, Martha. And I remember it's like, duh, I said, would you guys wear stuff if it said Busy Blondes? And everyone, they're like, sure. They said, you know, we're not going to wear like a cute little V-neck, but they're like, yeah, we wear a sweatshirt or a polo shirt. So there's me many years ago. There's Jeff, our listing partner on the far left. There's my husband, Glenn. To this day, Glenn still has his Busy Blonde sweatshirts and still wears them. Another type of Busy Blonde t-shirt that we got, Busy Blondes ask me about real estate. Do you expect your team to promote your branding? The brand goes on the sign, not individual names. Now, we happen to be very fortunate in California. The name can be as big as we want, and the logo of the company can be little. And that's one of the things we liked about KW, is they're all about the agent. They're not forcing their name to be big. On this open house sign, it's like, where's Waldo? Can you even see the logo? Can you find it? Most of you can. And we didn't cover it up on purpose. It's just, those were what our signs looked like. We purchased 200 of them. Our office had its own, our mega agent office had like a big storage garage. So I'll tell you, when you went out on that weekend, you knew there was something going on with someone called Busy Blondes. You knew it. And there's our little logo, our slogan, by the way. Our slogan, when you want a job done, hire a busy person. And the busy is spelled with the B-I-Z-Z-Y. So that was our slogan. Team, it's blurry because I had to blow it up and blow it up. This, I'm just giving you a hint. If you're going to run a team of size and scope, people are going to come and go. And we forever were taking new pictures, new pictures, new pictures, new pictures. Finally, we got smart. Each of these pictures are individual pictures. They can be put on any kind of a background. We could be in front of an ocean. We could be in front of a pretty house. We could be at a park. They're all individual. And that means every time somebody came and went, we didn't have to do a whole new photo session and round up 8 or 12 or 15 of us. We just had to take one new picture of the person and insert it. That's what I recommend you do for the future. I was one of the early bold trainers, like I said. You want clear expectations up front, whether it's admin or whether it's agents. You want some kind of a written contract and a job description, and you want confidentiality, non-compete clauses. What happens if the person leaves? What happens if they've sold something to a buyer and now that buyer is ready to resell? What happens? You want to be really clear about that. Sales compensations, it's very tricky. It's not just a one-word answer. I said yesterday, hate is a strong word, but it bothers me when I get a call or an email out of the blue from a stranger. I just need a quick question. My team leader said, talk to you about how I would pay my buyer agent. Look at all of the facets of how you pay somebody. Leads directly from you, leads that they procure on their own. What if it's their personal sphere? You know, is it on buyer sides? Is it on listing sides? Is it on both? As a team member, what do you pay for them? What do they pay for? Do you have an ISA or a lead coordinator? On a lot of teams, the salesperson pays that bonus to the ISA. What about future generation transactions? They brought in someone from their personal sphere. Maybe you pay them differently on that, maybe you don't. Personal sphere person lists the house. Then the personal sphere person has a friend that calls into Busy Blondes. Does that, you know, what happens? Future generation. It's very complex, and all I'm saying, and we don't have the time to talk about the pros and cons, all I'm saying is, I don't even care what you do. I'll make suggestions. I care that it's in writing and it's clear up front. Because one of the reasons I believe our team did have a really good culture and we didn't have many hard feelings, and we very rarely did anybody ever leave in a negative way, is we eliminate the misunderstandings when it's all in writing up front. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah, what happens if they leave? What are the non-compete clauses? Written contracts, other standards. These ones we've all talked about, so I don't need to go there again. You might have a code of dress for people that work in your organization. I had a standard about the condition of vehicle. In the beginning, I asked a stupid question. I said, do you have a car that's in good working condition? You know, they always said yes. I learned that there's different degrees of what someone considers good working condition. I'm not going to hire a buyer agent if their car looks like a dented in, you know, dirty old jalopy. It's a reflection on us. Storage for signs. Oh my gosh. Before we had our mega agent office and had that big garage, I remember we hired an agent one time and we gave her like, you know, the 6 or 8 signs, maybe 10. And she said, I don't have anywhere to put these. She lived in an apartment. She didn't have a garage. It was an open carport. They'd get stolen. I want to make sure, well, you don't need it if you store them yourself like we eventually did. Minimum standards for production. I do believe it's important to have a minimum standard. Depending on your town and your demographic and how fast sales happen or don't happen, that's going to vary drastically from team to team. Well, I'm big on the meetings and the trainings. And you may have a standard that you want them to be involved in certain company events. And I have a couple guests that I invited that are not KW, but whatever company you're with, or maybe it's your National Association of Realtor stuff that happens in your state. You know, you may have a standard that you want people to be involved in this stuff and you want them to be learning based. And I got several of my clients, they've got it right there in their contract. And they've got whether they're going to pay for it or whether they expect the agent to pay for it. Look, we are all required to do certain continuing educations just to keep our license active in this business. And we're required to pay for it. This is not a mean standard or expectation. And then this is an old slide for when I first started traveling and speaking and just talking about all of the things to consider when become an employer, when you become a boss, whether you're hiring salespeople who are usually on commission, but not always, whether you're hiring administrative people who are usually on W-2 and get paid through payroll with payroll tax, but not always. And really clear about the sick pay, about the vacation policies, about all of that. Here's the thing I like the most. Don't cut corners. It's not worth the risk. I love it when the assistant says, just pay me on a 1099. I won't have to pay taxes. You won't have to pay all that you know, Social Security and, you know, and all that payroll stuff. I'm happy on a 1099. And then later they sue you. It's not worth the risk to cut some of these corners. Get clarity, get it in writing, do it the right way. I have a couple clients right now that have just hired a new assistant, and for the first week or 2 or 3, they're just going to pay her on the by the hour, just, you know, in a straight check, just because, to make sure she's staying before they go through all of the payroll hoops. That doesn't really worry me, but in the big term of things, pay people the right way. If you're paying them as salespeople, 1099 them so that you can deduct it. Just do it right. A lot of people ask me about my partnership with Judy. The joke is we've been together longer than most marriages. We've been together since 1990. We turned the Busy Blondes over to the final partners who wrote us a very, very big check to truly buy the name, buy the brand, and take it into the future. We did get paid from them through 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. In 2019, they pretty much ran it into the ground. They stopped paying us. We looked into litigation. The people that we had turned it over to that paid us this generous amount of money, so I got no complaints. I mean, I did 7th level for a lot of years, and the final years, I got a big 6-figure check, and so did Judy, in addition to all the overrides we were getting. Sadly, they didn't really know much about running a real estate team. They were 2 people that are very prominent in Keller Williams. One of them is one of our biggest regional directors in the nation. The other one is one of our most famous team leaders in the state of California. Just because you know how to run a market center doesn't mean you know how to run a real estate team. So I don't know why I even brought that up. I guess I was saying Judy and I have been together since 1990, and I still think of her as my partner to this day. However, there is no Busy Blonde team in Los Angeles anymore, which is a shame. However, I retired in a really great way. I retired with more income and more comfort and more prestige. And for many years, I wasn't there, and the team thrived. You know, the team carried on for quite some time. So forming a partnership, you got to be really clear about each other's time commitments. The biggest reason that partnerships break up is someone thinks the other one isn't doing their share. So being real clear about that. Now, in the case of me and Judy, I met Judy before I ever got a real estate license, as I told you yesterday. She was my realtor, and then I got a real estate license and I went where she was. And in the beginning, I shadowed her. She let me just kind of sit in her office all day and just kind of listen to her all day. And she threw me some crumbs and threw me some leads. And we became real partners in 1990. What I'm saying is we already knew how we worked. She had sort of brought me into the business. There was no sponsoring back then. We were Maryland Realty. She knew what time I showed up every day. She knew how I dressed. She knew what time I went home. She knew that my husband at that time was a musician and he worked a lot at nights. And so I didn't mind working at nights. I had nothing else to do. She knew I had no children and I wasn't going to ever have children. I didn't want them. Remember, no kids, no pets, not even a live plant. So if you're considering a partnership with someone, really make sure you understand their hours, their schedule, their priorities. Obviously, expenses. Not every partnership is 50-50. Not every partnership starts out at 50-50. When Judy and I became partners in 1990, Judy is a lot older than me. She's in her mid-70s now. When Judy and I became partners in 1990, she had a huge business and years of decades of track record. I'd been in the business 4 years. Our original partnership, we were not 50-50. After a few years, we changed it and we became 50-50 because I kind of earned my stripes.
What was that phrase y'all used to say about getting to know each other before you get married?
You're so cute. It's going to come at the very bottom. You're good.
Okay.
You're good, Martha. Yeah. Yeah. And I say that tongue in cheek because I've been through so many marriages. But yeah, Martha has good memory. Different percentages. You may have a deal where, as we did with Judy, where, maybe one of you has a whole lot of past clients and the other person doesn't. Even when those past clients come along, you're going to still share them, but you're going to do them at a different split, different percentages. The division of the duties or the leads, long-term goals and priorities. Judy and I, we had never heard of Seventh Level. We were at Merrill Lynch Realty. We didn't know after that we were going to go to Prudential, and after that we were going to go to Remax, and after that we were going to wind up at Keller Williams. But long-term goals and priorities, I guess neither of us had kids, as opposed to you might have a partnership where both of you decide you're going to want family in the future, and just knowing and understanding that. And of course, knowing up front, what if it doesn't work out? Now, I got to be honest, Judy and I never did that. I do recommend it. It's called a buy-sell agreement, and it's what business partnerships do. I worked for a law firm when I was in my late teens before I did real estate. And the law firm, we did lots of buy-sell agreements for various corporations. When the corporation has more than one partner, sooner or later, they may get mad at each other. Sooner or later, one of them may want to go away and do something else. It's a buy-sell agreement. It's almost like a prenup. It's saying, we're not doing this now. However, in the future, if we ever want to do it, these will be our terms. And as Martha just said, there it is. Live together before getting married. I believe if you want to take on a partnership with someone, share a couple deals first. Just pick a listing or two, pick a buyer or two, and share them. And see how you work together. Go on the appointment, maybe a listing appointment together. Do some negotiating together. See how much you're on the same page, or if you kind of disagree, like, no, I don't want to do it that way. Or no, I always put my count in this in my counter offers. Live together before you get married. So here's my little rating scale again. For those of you that missed us yesterday, at the end of every session, I ask you, and you don't have to put it in the chat box, this is just for all of you. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rank your team on the structure and the standards? How strong are you in setting them? And does your team follow? Now I'm praying, you know what, Edgar and Jackie, I know you guys are in a big overwhelm right now. Just give me a yes in the chat box if you're still here, because one of the reasons I hoped you were able to zoom in today is this is a bunch of the stuff we're talking about right now, because you guys are in some real cool growth stages with your team. So Edgar or Jackie, if you're still here, give me a little yes in the chat box, and otherwise we'll just keep talking about this stuff on our private calls. All right, you're asking for a lot. What will they receive in return? This is the key to the kingdom, everybody. This is the center of the spokes in the wheel. What's your value proposition? You've got to have a strong value proposition for people to join you and for people to stay. And if you don't believe in your heart that the best place that these agents could be, or admin people, but I'm talking about sales agents, if you don't believe through every core of your being that this is the best spot for them, they're going to have an awesome career, they're going to have a great future, and this is going to be better than them working solo, and this is going to be way better than any other team in it. If you don't believe that in your core, in your soul, don't build the team, because you can't just fake it. So what are the different things that you have to offer to people? And it's going to be different from all of us. But we've got to really be confident. And you can use notes when you're having these interviews and having these discussions. You've got to really know, what are you offering people? See, I believed to my core, if people joined us, they were going to have a way better life. I believed to my core, they were going to have they were going to make more money on their 35% splits than if they were flying solo on 100%, you know, minus a cap. I believed that to my core. And we had lots and lots of agents that believed it too. I mean, hell, our own agents running around out there at 40%, at 35%, they got offers all the time. Oh my gosh, I'd pay you 50 if you were on my team. I'm like, nope, I'm happy. I know what I've got. I know what we've got. Now, I promised yesterday I would offer a couple things to you. And if this is way too soon for you, you know, don't bother, because you'll just lose it. But those of you that are getting into this state of building the teams and this value proposition, my husband, Glenn, is a numbers cruncher. He also became longtime top, well sought after MAPS coach. In fact, he was one of the only coaches where his rate was $1,500 a month instead of the $1,000 a month. As private coaches, our rates are lower, but he was, you know, very long time sought after. When he came on to the Busy Blondes as our sales manager, he's never been in real estate and he doesn't have a real estate license to this day. He created a spreadsheet of all of the things that most big teams offer and provide and pay for. He created a spreadsheet with all of these things and how much they would cost if the agent had to pay for them, him or herself. It came out to over $100,000 a year of stuff that we provide to a team. If any of you would like that spreadsheet, we're going to have in a couple more slides my email, and I'm happy to send it to you. You will need to change it, and I believe it's a PDF, so you're going to have to probably change it from scratch. But you'll need to change it because you might not offer these same things. These same things were not all offered on our team. However, if you're more of a structured thinker, a little more of a high C, and you'd like to see the spreadsheet, This is part of your value proposition of showing someone. If you really want to build a business and run it at a high level, these are all the things you're going to have to pay money for that we provide. All right, so rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you rank your ability to explain all the benefits of being in business with you? A bit shaky, or, oh, I got this?
Ray, I'm leaving. I'm going to my closing. It was
Okay.
so great.
Hey, Marcia, thank you for contributing. I asked Martha, I asked Martha if she would mind if I called on her now and then, because she lived a lot of this. It's one thing for me to blab about it, but she lived it. So Martha, good luck today. And everybody, if you're looking for Martha Bennett in Houston, she's the other Busy Blondes, and she'll do a great job for you.
Thank you, Ray. It was wonderful. Thanks, guys.
Okay, sweetie, we'll talk soon. All right, so
Run also, I have a showing at noon. So thank you so much for today's class and yesterday.
oh, okay, I'm just finishing up. Doreen, you were a pleasure. Thank you very much for speaking up and contributing.
Thank you.
What I say on this slide here, if this isn't exciting and inspiring to you, don't do it. I get so excited and so turned on. I mean, I know a few of you think I'm crazy. I think Cynthia is still with us. Some of you, when you have to hire someone, especially, oh my gosh, I've lost a buyer agent now. I say to you, I wish I could fly to your town and do it for you. I loved bringing on new people. I loved the interview process. Look, I've had many husbands. I'm good at lead generation. I'm good at recruiting. A lot of times at the end of a class like this, a lot of you are going to say, you know what, I don't need the darn team. I'm happy as a solo agent. Maybe I'll get a transaction coordinator to help me a little bit. I don't need the team. If this isn't super exciting to you, don't do it. It was what made me tick. As much as I never wanted children and I never wanted to raise a family, I loved having the team. I loved leading the team. I loved building the team. It was the most thrilling part of my whole real estate career. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it will achieve. That's a quote from Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich. One of my favorite books. If you're looking for a book to just kind of kick up your adrenaline a little bit and make you happy, that's an easy, fun, super positive read. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Remember, you are 3 key hires away from freedom and independence. It starts with your admin. Get someone super strong on that admin side. Then the next is the buyer side. Get some or several super strong people on the buyer side. If you choose, then you can start to have someone else do listings. And once you get those 3 key hires, your life and your business will be transformed. You're not going to be the hamster on the hamster wheel forever. So it goes back to what I said. Are we building a business or are we just owning a job? We're going to go from I do it to we do it to they do it. Final thoughts here. Spend time with the people who are where you want to be. My husband said to his sons, you are who you hang with. If you want to get really good at tennis, find a tennis partner that's better than you. Hang around with successful people. When Judy and I were in our early stages, every time we went to a seminar or a conference, before we went there, we were on the phone with some of the top agents. We were part of the Mike Ferry organization long before Keller Williams. We would call up some of the top agents, the ones that were on stage, the ones that were building teams, the ones that had buyer agents, the ones that were on panels. They were strangers, a lot of them. We'd call them and say, I know you don't know us. Could we please treat you to breakfast or lunch or dinner or a cup of coffee, a glass of wine sometime at the conference? We would sometimes meet people for dinner at 6 for breakfast at 6:30 or 7 in the morning before the session, just to be able to pick their brains. At this point, it's not about what you do, it's how you think. Gary Keller says that, leadership is teaching people how to think. That's why the coaching process is such a process. It's not just a handful of calls, I'm going to tell you what to do. We slowly but surely, we have to change your thinking. Positive input daily, so important. Like I said, the books, the tapes, you know, some of you are into scripture, some of you are into meditation. We've got to be giving ourselves positive input. As Martha said, when we talked about the accountability word, we get enough negative stuff coming at us all day in this business. It is not an easy business. It is not for the weak at heart. Positive input daily is so important. And therefore you want to be masterminding and brainstorming and have, oh, there I used the word, have accountability partners. I can't say enough about coaching. This isn't supposed to be about me. There is my contact information. There is my website if you want to know a little bit about me and my program. If you want that value proposition spreadsheet, shoot me an email, coachraywayne@gmail.com, so it's really easy. As I said to you yesterday, if you email me and you don't hear back in a couple days, send it again. I'm going through a real estate sale of my own, a real estate purchase of my own. I'm going through some issues with family, and I'm a coach, and I'm a trainer, and there's a lot on my plate, and I don't have an assistant. So if you want the spreadsheet, or if there's anything else I spoke of today that you'd like from me, make sure you email me more than once. And remember, we're always looking for talent, always keeping our radar up about who might be able to help us in one way or another. It's 11:30, about 11:35, so we're about an hour early. I'm delighted to do a Q&A. If anybody has any last questions for me, if you want to speak to me, if you want to type it in the chat box, those of you that have had enough, then I want you to go on and have a wonderful day, be profitable, be successful. Reach out to me if you care to. Look for me at Family Reunion. I'm always one of the main speakers in this big session all about teams. I don't know if we're going to even have a family reunion this year. Maybe you'll be looking at me on Zoom. And thanks so much. You guys have been really, really awesome. Any questions I can answer? I'll give you a minute. Says I've still got a few of you present. Oh my gosh, we've got 39 people that are still present. You're welcome, Jeffrey, darling. I'll be speaking to you next week. All right, then I am going to sign off. Thank you very much, Bailey. Thank you very much, Bailey, for being so supportive. Thank all of you for not getting mad yesterday when I couldn't get the PowerPoint to work. You know how to reach me. Go off there, you guys, and have an awesome week. Have a great job out there. Our business has